The Running Man, America's favorite game show.
I can't remember the first time that I saw The Running Man, but I was probably like 8 years old or something, and I caught it on HBO several times as a kid. I mean, obviously it's awesome. Those yellow spandex costumes are so iconic. Schwarzenegger, I think, has some of the best Schwarzenegger one-liners of any Schwarzenegger movie. The synth soundtrack is badass. And then Richard Dawson as Killian is such a slick and funny movie villain. I mean, I just love it. I love it. This is a movie that I would always find myself rewatching every couple of years. And the more that I watched it, the more I realized I liked it. It would always pull me in and get me to watch all the way to the end, fully immersed. Years later, I realized it was actually a Stephen King movie. He's not credited on the movie because he actually wrote it under his alter ego, Richard Bachman, at the time. And while the movie is set in the year 2019, the original book version, published back in 1982, imagined a dystopia America in the year 2025. Pollution, corporate dictatorship, economic collapse, everyone poor as fuck. The future that King described doesn't really feel like fantasy anymore. It feels familiar. You know, for most of my life, I think movies like Back to the Future Part 2 shaped what a lot of us thought that the future would be like. You know, hoverboards, flying cars, cool jackets and cool tech, great economy overall. But when we actually got to the year 2015, let alone 2025, we didn't end up in that future. So that got me thinking, was The Running Man one of the most accurate sci-fi dystopias ever made? So in this episode of Prophecy of Cinema, we're diving into the 7 prophetic themes from The Running Man and how this 40-year-old story might be one of the most accurate depictions of the future that we're moving into today. After the Stalkers, Sub-Zero, Buzzsaw, Dynamo, and Fireball all failed to kill Ben Richards, the audience is left stunned. No runner has ever gotten this far before. But instead of honoring the promise of freedom, the network schedules a final showdown. Richards versus Captain Freedom.
No pain, no gain.
But when Captain Freedom refuses to participate in the sham, the network decides to fabricate the entire fight using body doubles and high-tech CGI.
We're loading Richard's image onto the database, and when he's mapped onto the stunt double, you'll never know the difference.
Sensational. I love it.
The crowd erupts in cheers, fooled into believing that they just watched Richards die, when in reality, the whole thing was a lie. Prophetic theme number 1, reality is manufactured. Now, I remember rewatching that scene like 2015 or so, probably like 10 years ago. And I remember specifically thinking, there's no way the computers could ever do that. That's a little far-fetched to be able to take a body double and put on an exact replica that would fool the audience. Well, boy was I wrong. Because not only are computers able to do that now with AI, they're doing it better than we ever imagined. It was literally just the beginning of last year that I was editing an AI video for a client who wanted me to generate all these clips, and it looked awful. It looked like nonsense. Most of the stuff that I cranked out, nobody wanted to look at. It was slop. Well, it's not just slop anymore.
The White House claims to have negotiated a fantastic deal with AI, granting it control over national weather in exchange for always sunny weekends at Mar-a-Lago.
To enhance border security, White House unveils plan to train bald eagles as patriotic aerial surveillance units.
It's so good it can fool you now. And every month, it keeps getting better. We are now standing at a threshold where the line between what's real and what's fake is vanishing. What's going to happen when entire narratives on the news, events, and even people can just be generated from scratch and broadcast as the truth? The Running Man predicted this. It predicted this AI tech falling into the wrong hands, falling into an authoritarian technocracy and used to fool and control the masses.
Ticket agent and security guard Richard shot at point-blank range when he arrived at the airport.
But that's not true.
It showed us that digital illusions could overwrite real life and that perception could be programmed. And that once this technology existed, it wouldn't just be used, it would be weaponized against the public to control them. How did The Running Man predict this eventuality? Well, here's what most people looking back at this film 40 years later might miss. It was a commentary on what was happening in real media at that exact time. In 1987, the very same year that The Running Man hit theaters, President Ronald Reagan eliminated the Fairness Doctrine. That doctrine had required news broadcasters to present opposing viewpoints on controversial issues. Once it was gone, partisan media was no longer just tolerated, it was basically incentivized. And so the problem is, when the news becomes partisan, it becomes loyal to power, not to truth. A partisan news network will lie, distort, and omit in service of the side that it supports. And that's not journalism, that's propaganda. The Running Man understood the dangers of that shift, and it foresaw a world where media isn't a check on power, it's a weapon of power. And today, with AI technology advancing faster than regulation, we're closer than ever to seeing that dystopian prediction fulfilled. Eventually, this is going to happen, and once it airs, millions of people will believe it. Some will defend it, but most will never question it. Once media becomes an arm of propaganda, truth no longer is part of the equation. The Running Man predicted this with eerie precision. Right now, at the time of me recording this, we're at the "this is possible" moment. That could certainly be possible. But in another year or so, we might be looking back at this and going, oh yeah, the news did start doing that. And that's when people had no idea what was real anymore. The Running Man here was right. Prophetic theme number 2, entertainment as mind control. In both the book and the film version of The Running Man, we see wall-to-wall entertainment used to keep the population quiet, distracted, and obedient. Massive TVs broadcast the show across poor neighborhoods, where people may not even have shelter, but they have the feed. Office workers, pedestrians, everyone is glued to the screen. Forget having housing or healthcare in the future. What the government will ensure that everyone has is a giant TV screen. Whether you're in a cubicle or a cardboard box, you're expected to tune in and cheer on state-sponsored murder.
What's the #1 television show in the whole wide world?
As Killian reminds us, it's the world's most popular game show, and you don't want to feel left out by not watching, do you?
Hey Charlie, you see The Running Man last night? I never miss it. I even won $500.
While that was written by Stephen King in 1982, imagining the year 2025, cut to the actual year 2025, and we now live in a very similar version of that same reality. The algorithm-driven attention economy.
And they have, I think to some degree, affected our behavior with the world and with one another and how we build and what we build.
We are all now caught on our devices, swiping cat videos and liking memes while the world outside of us declines and vital institutions are being dismantled. But most of us are too distracted to notice all that. This idea of entertainment being used to control the population isn't new. Thousands of years ago, the Romans had a name for it: bread and circuses. Brutal gladiatorial games, theater, and cheap thrills were used to keep the masses docile as the empire crumbled beneath them. The Running Man updated that concept for a media-saturated society. When the economy collapses and when trust erodes and when the people are very pissed off about their way of life declining and having nothing, you don't try to fix their problem if you're an authoritarian government. Instead, you give them death as a distraction.
Kill that son of a bitch!
And let's be honest, who wouldn't want to watch that? And from the system's point of view, that's a very effective strategy, actually. Because when the people are distracted, they can't protest, they can't rebel, they can't demand better. You pacify them, and then they feel disconnected from the outside world. And that way, the problems that they see on their screens, well, that becomes someone else's problem. Somebody's problem out there that they can't really do anything about because they're busy watching their screen here. And today, we feel more disconnected than ever. We are all, myself included, addicted to our phones to some degree or the other, caught in a loop of short videos and shiny content, stuff that distracts us for hours on end. And here's the thing. It creates this feeling that all of the real problems, like the climate crisis or the rise in inequality, you can just scroll past that. Don't like that post? Don't click on it. Just scroll away. Someone else will deal with it, right? But what happens when everyone else is scrolling away like you are? Now look, things aren't quite as bad as they were in The Running Man. I mean, we don't quite have gladiatorial games to death on TV yet, but we might be closer than you think. How far off are we, honestly, from a streaming platform that is just desperate for ratings, desperate to compete against the other 24 streaming services, and also the decline in viewership, and also the fact that people can't afford these streaming services anymore, being like, you know, guys, if we did this for real, it would be a huge hit. I mean, as things decline, that might start to make a lot of sense to some streaming service. It'd be funny if Disney did it first. And here's the scary part. The Running Man didn't just predict that. It showed us what people were willing to accept as long as they're entertained. And that is another key point. People willing to accept crazy things as long as they're entertained.
And who loves you? And who do you love? One more time. Yes!
I mean, some people were willing to accept a certain individual who was a TV talk show personality becoming president of the United States in real life because they were just so entertained by him. That was one of the biggest selling factors.
Here he is, ready to pay the price for our home audience. The Butcher of Bakersfield!
So here's the formula. If you are someone in power and you want to control your population, if you want to suppress dissent, well, then what you got to do is give your people a villain on TV to root against. That way, you can focus the public's anger on someone else. And while they're distracted, then you can get away with anything. And that is, unfortunately, definitely happening 100% right now. The Running Man was right. Welcome back to Prophecy of Cinema. In this series, we look at classic stories, books, and films that warned us about the direction that the world might be heading, and sometimes they were more accurate than we ever imagined. Today, we're diving back into The Running Man, not just the 2 movie versions, but the original novel by Stephen King. Specifically, we're looking at one of its boldest predictions. A United States transformed into a full-blown surveillance state where the government watches everything that you do. With recent events echoing this story, could this eventuality be coming to our world soon? And what would be the consequences?
You're one of the cops who locked up all my friends, burned my songs. People like you took this country and turned it into a jail.
In the Running Man novel, citizens live under constant surveillance. Every movement and every word tracked and logged by the state. Cameras are everywhere. And in the film, we open on a scene of protests and riots. The poor are starving, and the government responds with a military crackdown. Here, protest isn't just discouraged, it's criminalized. Now, to people in the 1980s, that may have sounded like a far-off dystopia, but now? It's starting to feel like something that we might see coming in the next few years. Prophetic theme number 3, total surveillance. Over the last decade or so, we've all just come to accept that our data is being tracked. Everything we do on a computer, everything we type into our phone, all of our conversations, every location we visit, everything we buy, it's all being tracked, guys. Like, they've just got all this information on us in some data center somewhere in the world. And while corporations have been happily profiting from all of this data collection, selling to other companies and making billions of dollars, governments are now wanting to get in on it too. The Trump administration has reportedly accelerated the expansion of its own national data infrastructure, quietly streamlining data collection across federal agencies. Publicly, it's sold as modernization, but behind the scenes, it looks like something much darker: the construction of a centralized citizen profiling system. We all know that they've been watching us this whole time, but How long is it before it's not just watching anymore? If everything you do online, your browsing, your purchases, health records, location, political leanings, can all be analyzed and cross-referenced, that's not just a database, that's a control grid. And in the hands of any authoritarian regime, it becomes a weapon. A silent threat that says, we know who you are, and we know what you think. Under that kind of surveillance, who would dare sign a petition or speak out or show up to a protest? And that's the true danger, not just the loss of our privacy, but the destruction of our courage itself. The First Amendment guarantees us the right to protest, and it was put in there by our founding fathers because they knew that unchecked power tends towards corruption eventually. Protest isn't a rebellion, it's supposed to be accountability for the powerful. It's how we make change without having to resort to violence. But today, certain factions, certain news organizations are starting to call all protesters criminals, traitors, and rioters. It's usually rioters. They want to exaggerate the amount of rioters so they can paint the entire protest as being bad, even though it was for a good reason, but they don't talk about that. They talk about the rioters. And it's disappointing for me to have to say this, but even some close friends of mine have told me that they don't like protesters. But what happens if the protest was ever made outlawed? Don't think that that can't happen. In an autocratic, technocratic future where the government sees all and knows all, they have enough info on all of us to know if you're thinking about protesting their wrongdoings before you even decide to do it. And what happens when these things get you flagged in their database? That being possible is no longer in the realm of science fiction. That's possible now. We already have facial recognition, AI surveillance, predictive algorithms, and private companies like Palantir who have been collecting all of this information from different databases and are now handing it over to the government. The result is the government is now gaining more and more of a steady stream of behavioral data on all of us as individuals, which could in turn give them leverage over the public like never before. And in the wrong hands of an overreaching system, they could use this information to label all dissenters as enemies of the state. Now, they might not necessarily punish people with jail time for this. It would start instead with exclusion. Imagine that because you're in their database, you start losing jobs, or you're blocked from housing or travel accommodations. In this type of scenario, it starts with a sort of soft totalitarianism enforced by fear. And once that infrastructure is built, freedom doesn't just vanish overnight. It starts to become conditional.
You're one of the cops who locked up all my friends, burned my songs. People like you took this country and turned it into a jail.
Let me paint a picture for you for how we might end up further evolving ourselves into a Running Man type of future. Imagine a scenario where those in power say, "Did you say the right thing about the government? Did you say something nice about your dear leader, your authoritarian president? Well, congratulations, you are a good citizen and you get more freedom points." But for those that criticize the regime, maybe you made some negative social media posts and talked about how wrong this was, or you made a certain amount of YouTube videos criticizing them, well, you lose your freedom points. You're a bad citizen. No policing this necessary, because everyone in society is going to police it. See, the danger of all this data collection is that eventually it could be used to create a digital caste system where obedience to the empire is rewarded and defiance is punished. You see, surveillance started off cute and fun. So what? I'm not saying anything bad. What are they going to do to me? Surveillance here isn't just external cameras recording you and collecting your data online. It's worse than that. It ends up becoming everyone around you, friends and family, subtly peer pressuring you into conformity. And then overtly. We've seen this portrayed in the Black Mirror episode Nosedive. The premise? Everyone's social credit score determines their access to housing, jobs, and services. And this is relevant because it mirrors China's real-life social credit system, where they essentially get freedom points for being loyal to the regime. And of course, we've seen this type of scenario prophesized in 1984 by George Orwell. 1984 was the original blueprint for totalitarian surveillance. Citizens here are watched by telescreens, giant TVs that can watch you inside your home. Language is controlled, and people have to attend mandatory group thought rallies where they are asked to channel their anger at the enemies of the regime, and any form of dissent towards this is criminalized. Now, 1984 was a sort of a worst-case scenario of how a technologically advanced dictatorship could take it about as far as you could go with control of the population, but 1984 was a direct ancestor of some of the Running Man's themes. This concept that Big Brother is watching you, it's something that's slowly moving out of the realm of science fiction, and it's now sneaking up on all of us. And the worst thing is, almost nobody seems to be noticing or caring enough about it. But this could be really a problem. This could be a problem, guys. It's called the salami slicing effect, where you slowly chisel away at somebody's freedoms. Nobody notices when 1 or 2 slices of salami are gone, but after a couple of years of slicing salami, suddenly you're out of salami. And on a personal note, this is why I've been to 3 protests this year, and I plan to keep going to more of them for as long as I still can, because one of the Running Man's themes was how it portrayed control disguised as protection, and how surveillance would be sold to us as a way to keep us safe, but in reality, it's a way to keep us all in line.
Rust.
Finally, can we do anything to prevent the rise of a total surveillance state like in The Running Man? Personally, I believe that we're living in one of the most important turning points in history, caught between a future that certain sci-fi films warned us about and an unfolding chain of events that could totally take us directly there. That means that our actions now are crucial in shaping the kind of future that we not only want, but need to live in. It's a necessity, and I believe one of the most powerful tools that we still have is the protest. Most people assume that the era in United States history with the most protests must have been the 1960s during the Civil Rights era. But that's not true. The time period with the most protests is happening right now. From Black Lives Matter to climate marches to workers' strikes to student walkouts, this is the most activated generation in modern history. And yet, many still say protesting does nothing. But that's what the control structure wants you to believe. That's how pacification works. Those kind of statements remind me of the same people that 35, 40, 50 years ago were saying that these science fiction stories were absurd and ridiculous and would discount them. And now they're coming true. So don't listen to those people. Historically, they were always wrong. And here's a fact that you won't hear on mainstream media. Political scientists have found that when just 3.5% of a nation's population engaged in sustained protest, a substantial political change becomes inevitable. And that's why media outlets like Fox News work so hard to change the subject, dismissing protests as riots, blaming the protesters, or spinning alternate narratives altogether, because they know how powerful the protest actually is. In the next episode of Prophecy of Cinema, we continue our exploration of some of the Running Man's predictions and focus on perhaps its wildest prediction, that the U.S. economy would collapse sometime soon. Could this be possible? Could the US dollar become so devalued that it becomes essentially useless? Historically, this has happened before. But could it be coming here? And what would happen to the population of millions left broke and desperate? Do recent events hint that this could be coming? Tune in to the next episode to find out. Welcome back to Prophecy of Cinema. In this episode, we're going to continue our deep dive into The Running Man. And this time, we're focusing on perhaps its wildest prediction yet, that the US economy would collapse, that the dollar would become so devalued that it would no longer be worth the paper it's printed on. In the novel, this collapse turns everyday citizens into desperate scavengers. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But history shows that currencies do collapse, and desperate people will do anything to survive. And if you look around today, there are signs that we may already be headed in that direction. In the Running Man novel, the U.S. economy has collapsed by 2025, and the current regime has replaced the original currency with new dollars. These new dollars are digitally tracked and the only form of money accepted for most goods and services. Our protagonist, Benjamin Richards, has almost no access to new dollars. His old dollars are worthless, so devalued that he can't even afford basic necessities, let alone health care for his sick daughter. Prophetic theme number 4. Desperation economy. In the book's opening, his wife, who's been forced into prostitution for wealthy rich people around town, suggests to Ben that maybe he just tries to hustle harder, and maybe that way he can help save their sick daughter. But Ben snaps on her, because in this world, everyone's already been hustling this whole time, and they're all exhausted from it. Hustling and the idea of hustle culture at this point has gotten nobody nowhere. And so he decides the only thing left to do is to go downtown and line up for the games. The US economy in this world is in such dire condition that masses of unemployed people volunteer to be hunted on live television, not for fame, but because they're out of options entirely. The prize money here could lift them out of bone-crushing poverty or save a dying family member, and the only other choice is to just keep hustling endlessly and keep starving. And that's the world we're rapidly approaching. A desperation economy where survival is gamified and suffering is monetized, where people are stripped of nearly everything, and yet the powerful still find a way to prey on them.
And now, back to climbing for dollars.
There's a repeating historical pattern when economies begin to fail. The people at the top begin to get much richer, and the people at the bottom suffer the most. And the middle class, they start falling fast. Industries that once supported stable jobs get wiped out by automation, outsourcing, and economic shocks. Suddenly, twice as many people are fighting for the same handful of unstable, low-paying jobs. Wages stay flat. Costs and living expenses explode. Out of that imbalance, a new kind of economy emerges, one that feeds on desperation. Today, it doesn't look like death matches, not yet, but the decline is well underway, and the signs are everywhere. It looks like college graduates fighting for the same low-wage jobs as those without degrees. It looks like a generation poor, more anxious, and worse off than their parents. It looks like skyrocketing rent, while home ownership drifts out of reach. It looks like wages shrinking, prices of oil and food climbing, stable jobs vanishing overnight, and personal debt piling up as everyone expects things to get better in the coming years, but they get worse instead. The games haven't started, but the desperation has. You see, the truth about this corrupt system is, it doesn't want you to find a way to thrive. Instead, it needs you to stay just broke enough so that you keep hustling endlessly. You're told that it's your fault if you can't keep up, that anyone who fails just didn't try hard enough. Too much avocado toast. But if you stop, well, there's always someone more desperate and more ready to take your place. It's not just collapse, it's collapse disguised as opportunity. And this idea of old dollars being replaced by new dollars, that's not just some sci-fi plot point that Stephen King came up with. That might be coming to our world too. After a real-world economic collapse, a new authority, like a fusion of corporate and government power, could roll out a fully controlled digital currency. Access to those new dollars would become a symbol of privilege and compliance. Old dollars? They would become worthless, maybe still only good on the street and the black market. By making the new currency the only legal tender, the regime could reward loyalty and punish dissent. They would essentially start cutting off access to food, shelter, or medicine, or food for people that speak out against them. Historically speaking, we've seen this story before. It happened to Germany in the 1920s, the Soviet Union in the 1990s, Zimbabwe in the 2000s, and Venezuela in the 2010s. Each collapsing economy here replacing its currency in a desperate attempt to regain control. The Running Man saw this coming, and it asked, what happens when the only way to survive is to perform for the powerful? And the answer is exactly the world that we're walking into now. Could the US economy really collapse like Stephen King predicted in The Running Man back in 1982? Well, the answer is yes. This is something that I've personally been concerned with, over the last 15 years. As of now, in 2025, the national debt has crossed 37 trillion, and thanks to his so-called big, beautiful bill, we're on track to hit 40 trillion by next year. And the CBO says that it could exceed 50 trillion by 2033 if current policies continue. That'll be when some of the X-Men movies finally come out, I think. The truth is, you can't just keep stacking up trillions of dollars in debt with no end in sight. Economists warn that at some point, the world will completely just lose faith in the US dollar. And when that happens, we're going to enter a serious reckoning. Other countries are already preparing for this. BRICS nations are exploring alternatives to the US dollar, and foreign investment is shifting. And we, the average American, are being left in the dark, willfully unaware, trapped in this media circus that keeps us concentrated on attacking each other, focused on somehow going back to a nostalgic past of the 1950s. But seriously, if we don't change course quickly, and I mean seriously, this dystopian future that we thought was just some silly science fiction is going to become our new reality. And if you insist on nostalgia for some reason, here's the nostalgia that we actually need. We have to start taxing the wealthy again, like we did before Ronald Reagan gutted the system and gave these massive tax breaks to billionaires. We need to go back to the time before Reagan ended the fairness doctrine and allowed partisan media to make us hate each other. We need to go back to a time when we had a more fair economy that actually funded the promises that the government made to the people. Because if we don't, the Running Man's version of the future isn't just some possibility, it's inevitable. Coming up in the next episode, what happens when fascism reaches its final form? When all media is consolidated and weaponized to control what the public sees, hears, and believes? What happens when truth itself is outlawed and speaking it becomes an act of rebellion? In part 4, we'll explore how the Running Man predicted the next phase of authoritarianism in America, and we'll track the current events that are bringing this prophecy to fruition. In the Schwarzenegger version of The Running Man, the turning point comes when raw, unedited footage contradicts the government's official story.
All rioters must be eliminated.
The hell with you. I will not fire at helpless human beings.
Where's it coming from?
Network satellite.
The system here relies on lies, and when those lies collapse, so too does the illusion of control.
So please bear with us. We're experiencing technical difficulties.
Bullshit!
Prophetic theme number 5. Truth as rebellion.
Truth hasn't been very popular lately.
And that line hits even harder in 2025. We now live in a post-truth society where facts are optional and the narrative is everything. People are conditioned by partisan media to only trust one version of the story. Sometimes the only voice that matters is a single man's, Donald Trump, whose Truth Social platform literally names his version of reality as truth.
What is truth, Tony? What is truth? You know what's truth? What you say is truth, what I say is truth, what he says is truth.
Back in the 1980s, whistleblowers then had almost no way to reach the public. But now, with social media, leaks, and encrypted messages, anyone with the right evidence can challenge the powers that be. And that makes truth dangerous. We've seen it firsthand.
There's something going on inside the government that's really wrong, and I can't ignore it.
Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning exposed war crimes and government lies. Edward Snowden revealed mass surveillance on American citizens. Francis Hagen showed how Facebook profits from hate and division.
If you want the truth, you should seek it out for yourself. That's what they're afraid of.
Each time, the same thing happens. Rather than debate the facts, the system attacks the messenger. Character assassination becomes the first line of defense. And whether you support the whistleblowers or not, you have to ask, how much of your opinion was shaped by media designed to discredit them? When the truth becomes a rebellion against the system, the power structure doesn't just seek to silence it, it seeks to repackage it and replace it with a whole different narrative. And unfortunately, on most people, this works. We've watched public opinion be reshaped in real time, like when Tucker Carlson aired selectively edited January 6 footage to change the story, or when alternative facts became an acceptable phrase in politics, or when deepfakes started circulating, giving anyone the tools to literally fake reality. This is no longer fiction. This is the world the Running Man warned us about. Prophetic theme number 6, media as a weapon of fascism.
Food riot in progress. Approximately 1,500 civilians, no weapons evident.
In The Running Man 1987, Ben Richards is framed through doctored footage. In reality, he refused to open fire on civilians protesting over food, but the edited broadcast reverses the story, making it look like he wanted to massacre them.
Repeat, unarmed. Abort attack. Acknowledge Yankee 99er.
The hell with you.
With fake voiceover lines that he never said and AI-enhanced edits, the public sees a manufactured villain, and they cheer for his execution. Today, we live in a world where narrative manipulation is happening in a similar fashion. And the power to do what happened in The Running Man, changing Ben Richards' voice to say things he didn't, making one event look like a completely different other event happened, well, that's just one click away. The battle is no longer over what's true, it's over who gets to define the truth itself. The news, in many cases, isn't real news anymore. It's entertainment dressed up as journalism. Now, on a personal note, a close family member of mine recently said something that was very revealing of the times we're living in. They said, "I love watching Fox News because it's the most entertaining thing on TV." And there you go. People don't tune into the news for facts anymore. They tune in for the personalities. Hosts who perform the most outrage and get them the most riled up. Talking heads who confirm what they know their viewers already want to believe. One major US network was sued for over $1.7 billion for knowingly spreading falsehoods. And what was their legal defense? They said, "Our audience understands that these are just opinions." But the truth is, most people don't realize they're watching propaganda. They think they're watching the news. They watch cable channels because it's more entertaining to them. They feel informed, but what they don't realize is they're being managed. Here's how you can usually spot propaganda. When a so-called news outlet always paints one side as the good guys who are noble and honest and righteous and care about you, and the other side is corrupt, irredeemably bad, and they're evil. When they never are willing to criticize their own side, and they never show complexity to a story, and they always avoid nuance of any certain topic so that you don't really understand it. Well, that's not journalism. That's storytelling intended to persuade you. And so it's not about informing their viewers at all. It's about managing your perception of reality to benefit those in power. The Running Man predicted this. It predicted that reality would become a product. A story told by those who own the cameras. And here we are today, living in a world of unreality, where people are willing to believe almost anything, and even go along with fascism itself, as long as they're entertained. And under an ever-growing authoritarian government, how long is it before they start using these new AI tools to completely fabricate voice and video, and broadcast it on their propaganda news channels to their conditioned followers? Prophetic theme number 7. The charismatic dictator.
Without further ado, it's time to start running!
Damon Killian is, in my opinion, a great movie villain. He's slimy, he's manipulative, but he isn't portrayed as a monster. He's a spokesperson. He's a marketer.
And who loves you? And who do you love? One more time! Yes!
Played brilliantly by Richard Dawson, who actually was a TV talk show host. Killian is slick, likable, and completely full of it. He lies with a smile, manipulates the truth on live television, and sells death as entertainment, and the public completely loves him for it. And that's the archetype, the friendly dictator. Not a screaming tyrant in military fatigues, a polished showman in a blazer, someone who doesn't command obedience, he earns devotion. Today's authoritarians don't need armies, they have brands. They show up in your feed, your TV, your timeline, not as threats, but as familiar faces. Relatable, entertaining, charismatic. And for this final prophetic theme, I don't think I need to name names. You've already seen it, you've lived through it, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. The Running Man predicted that too, and once again, it was right. Had Damon Killian just not died, it's completely believable that this TV talk show host could have run for president here, and he would have absolutely won. So why does the Running Man still matter? Well, I think that it matters now more than ever. It didn't just predict the future, it understood the forces that were shaping it and the eventual outcome long before most people did. It warned us that when a corrupt capitalist society like ours begins to collapse, those in power don't just try to fix the problem, they put on a show to distract the population. And here we are in a world of growing surveillance, where AI can literally do exactly what we saw in the film, where news anchors are entertainers spinning a false narrative, and where TV talk show hosts come to lead the nation to fascism and corporate totalitarianism. So for those reasons, the Running Man matters now more than ever, because the future it warned us about is not just a warning anymore, it's a mirror. Hey guys, if you dug that, my first science fiction novel, The New World Project, is coming out spring 2026, but you can DM me now for an advance copy.